Isn't it weird how lucky Putin is that all of his political opponents just like dive random shit? Like what's going on there? What's up with that?
I feel the same way. I don't profess to be a great expert here. Cenk, I'm going to come to you in a second. I'm just going to have a quick break to speak to the former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, General Wesley Clark. General, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Oh, happy to be here, Piers. I'm listening to this panel. Look, there's a lot of misinformation.
Is that Ron Paul? That chat is not entirely correct. The reality is that 3 guys on the team entered UBL's room and shot him before O'Neill did. But he was most likely the guy that actually killed him. Listen, if you got shot 3 times, okay, with 5.56 rounds, I'm assuming they're using M4s or some variation or whatever, right? You're probably dead, okay? I don't think you're coming back from that one. The only thing I will say about Obama, Osama. Wait, Obama? Osama. Obama bin Laden? Osama bin Laden. Holy shit. Osama bin Laden is, he had a copy of... Oh, never mind. Wait, I thought I saw a picture of the actual PlayStation case. I didn't know you had the PC version. Wait, what? Okay, am I just inventing a picture that I thought that it was Emil? Okay, never mind. I thought I saw a picture of like some scattered shit and there was like a Final Fantasy 7 disc. I think I'm just fucking losing it. Never mind, okay.
In Ukraine on the 31st of March, I went through Maidan. I talked to the people. I looked at the lamppost where Putin's henchmen had killed a bunch of Ukrainians. There were a bunch of bullets still embedded in the lamppost. I followed it very, very closely. I don't know exactly what you want to talk about. If I'd been on your panel, I would probably disagree with most of them. The people in Ukraine are fighting for democracy. NATO didn't push itself to the borders. It was drawn to the borders by the people in Eastern Europe who wanted...
No! That too! These countries begged to join NATO. Why? If Russia's so chill and cool, why did they beg? You want to know why Estonia, Latvia, you want to know why they joined in groups? Why these countries joined in groups? It's because it felt horrible and because you're like favoring a country. You're not just going to let one of them into. You're not going to let one. People wanted to join in groups because they all wanted to be. Bro, do you know what it's like? What it would be like joining NATO? Ukraine is feeling this right now. Okay, imagine you're on a neighborhood block. And there's 10 houses, and every single house has a fucking sign in the front yard saying like protected by ADT or protected by security or whatever. And you're the only house without a security system. You're like, fuck you guys, what the fuck? And then the fucking robbers come down the street. You're like, well, fuck me, I guess, because I'm the only one without a fucking key camera or whatever. I guess come fuck my shit up, right? You have to want to join NATO. They work to join NATO, and then everybody in NATO has to accept you. The idea that these countries are like absorbed by or forced to join NATO, like, come on, bro. It's such a stupid. Like NATO is expanding eastward in some militaristic fashion.
NATO didn't push itself to the borders. It was drawn to the borders by the people in Eastern Europe who wanted freedom. They wanted freedom from Russian oppression. That's why NATO expanded in response to them. Not because NATO wanted to expand. It's because in order to stabilize, you had to be able to provide investment, and to get investment, people needed security, and they were living in fear of Russia coming back. Now, when did Putin...
Wait, who the fuck is this guy? Yes. This ties in kind of to what I was talking about yesterday. People always have this assumption that like, oh, corrupt countries, or that's where we're going to invest in because we can abuse the population. Blah, blah. No, stable countries is where people like to establish business. You need stability. You need political stability, geographic stability. You have to have stability in order for the economy to follow. Your institutions are what build your country. I don't mean that in a, like the FDA. I just mean like knowing that if somebody fucks me over, I can take them to court and sue them. There is a rule of law that if I invest in something, somebody's not just going to steal my fucking money. That there are functional banks that I can withdraw money from if I need it. There are creditors and debtors that are assured to borrow money and pay money back. Like these are all part of like a stable country that you have to. We take a lot of this for granted. In the West because we're spoiled, but it's good to have these things. And when you don't, it's really hard to make anything work.
Putin decided to come back.
Former NATO Supreme Allied Commander Wesley Clark. Oh, my God, where's his theme music when he joined?
It's security, and they were living in fear of Russia coming back. Now, when did Putin decide to come back? As soon as he became president in 1999, at the speech he made in the inauguration of President Kuchma in Ukraine. Putin said, Ukraine and Russia, we're more than brothers. We're in each other's souls. Poland sent its national security advisor to see me after they said, he's trying to restore the Soviet Union. He's coming after us. So this is a long-held ambition by Mr. Putin. And he's seen weakness in the West repeatedly. And that weakness has encouraged him to move. And it's going to continue until the West shows strength. And that strength means providing much more to Ukraine, bringing Ukraine into NATO, and saying to Mr. Putin very directly, look, stop. We're not interested in strategic arms discussions. We're not interested in investing in your economy. We're not interested in having nice conversations in Switzerland with you until you pull back.
If you want to blame anybody, it wouldn't even be NATO. It would be the European Union, right? Because the big conflict that was going on prior to 2014 was the Soviet Union was engaged in a hot and cold war with the European Union, where they were shooting missiles at each other, like fighting over Ukrainian ground in order to try to get Ukraine to join their particular markets. Oh no, wait, fuck. No, wait, never mind. I think Ukraine just wanted to join the European Union market because it was a better market. Oh, wait, no, there was no actual war. Ukraine was just like, hey, I want access to the European Union market, and the Russia said, no, you're not allowed to do that. You need to join our trade union, our customs union. It's even a more restrictive market. Like the European Union, it was just giving them a good, like basically a trade deal. I don't think it was joining like an official capacity. It was just like having access to the trade market. I think it was a bilateral, trade agreement that was going to be signed. But for Russia, they're like, no. Join our trade union, our trade. It's meaning that Russia gets to set tariff policy and everything else for the entirety of everybody involved. Like that's it. Like it's like the difference here is stark. Right? Like, no, you can't choose to join or choose to gain access to the European markets. We're going to invade you. So you have to join us. Be our friend.
We're not interested in having nice conversations in Switzerland with you until you pull back, return the children, account for the inductees, bring to trial the war criminals that have been indicted in Ukrainian courts, and you owe us close to $1 trillion in destruction of our country. So here's these are very clear lines. This is 1937, 1938, and you would have heard the same kind of apologists for Hitler. You would have heard him saying that the peace in Versailles was unfair, and the French, and there's corruption, and so forth. There's corruption in every government. It's there in your government. It's there in the United States. It's there in Ukraine, but it's never the same as it is in Russia, where organized crime works as an arm of the government connected to the intelligence agencies to assure that Putin and his cronies get what they want.
Oh, God. But what about the Twitter files of the United States? You're going to say the CIA is any different? You really think the CIA is any fucking different, bro? In America, we have corruption too, bro. You don't even know what corruption is, okay? What about fucking Andrew Tate? You're going to talk to me about corruption when an innocent, balding man like that is being arrested and locked up for no good reason by the CIA?
So I think it's a very difficult time. I don't know how the negotiations are going to turn out, but I would tell you this, that Mr. Trump's in a tough position because if he gives Putin what he wants, he looks weak to the rest of the world.
Yep.
And if he looks to the rest of the world, China's going to move. We've got in the United States a window now to do something in the Middle East, and I think Netanyahu probably will ask Mr. Trump to do it and pose a choice for the Iranian regime, either knock off the hegemonial aspirations and shut down this arc of resistance, including the weapons to the Houthis, or face the consequences.
That's fucking delusional, but I appreciate the optimism.
With Iran, you have to go to the source. With Russia, you have to stand firm. We've had deterrence in place for 70 years. We have nuclear weapons. Putin doesn't want to use a nuclear weapon. He's afraid of nuclear weapons, but he's using them to threaten. So people like your guy whose name I didn't get, these are people who are repeating Russian talking points.
True.
That's exactly what the woman from Ukraine said. Now,
True.
I will tell you that people in Ukraine are suffering, and they would love an end to this conflict. They didn't choose it. It was forced on them. But the only way it's going to be successfully resolved is by strong U.S. leadership. And Mr. Trump is in a position where no matter what he said about ending the war in 24 hours, he's in a position where he simply cannot and will not concede everything that Putin wants. He won't do it. If he does, you won't make America great again. You'll invite war elsewhere in the world.
True.
I'll see you go to the rest of the panel here.
Yeah.
I'll stop.
Well, no, you know what, General? I've interviewed you many times. I've seen you interview many times. I've never seen you quite this angry. It feels to me like you're angry about where things are
I'm angry
going.
about Piers, I'm angry about hearing misinformation from some members of your. Okay. Now, I was. Can I explain something before you talk, please, sir? I was at the beginning of NATO enlargement. I was there at the beginning. I talked to foreign leaders. I set up the program as a staff officer in the Pentagon. I was the NATO commander who went to Bulgaria.
Oh, so he's literally the deep state.
And Romania and Estonia and Latvia. And they told me, we've got to be in NATO. They didn't say, hey, if you want us, okay, I bet you, blah, 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 blah. We said, we don't want you. It's too much of a problem. They said, please.
Yeah, they all wanted to join. They were like, not just one, please, let us in, please.
Please help us. And so that's exactly.
I'm laughing. It's not funny. It's like.
What happened? That's how we got there. In 2014, when Putin went into Crimea, the Ukrainians could have stopped it. But they asked the United States, what should we do? And the United States told them, give up Crimea. Why? Because we wanted Putin's cooperation in the Middle East.
Because we were still in 2014. Were we worried about when did the ISIS shit even start? God, fuck. Obama foreign policy. Oh no, we don't talk about Obama's foreign policy, okay?
And with Iran to stop Iran's nuclear program. When Putin went further in Donbass, we provided information, but we provided no lethal assistance to Ukraine. For all these years, the United States administration was timid in dealing with Putin. It's like one member of the administration said recently, the Biden administration said, we never expected to have nuclear weapons. I mean, Nuclear weapons have been the foundation for Western security since the end of the Second World War. We've had near confrontations with the Soviets. And because American presidents didn't back down, we didn't have war. Now, Mr. Trump has put himself in an extremely difficult position. But all of our talk about Ukraine and telling Ukraine in advance, you're going to have to give up your territory. And by the way, you're not going to be a member of NATO. Let's not do any of this right now. Let's get the forces in Ukraine, the weapons.
Have you noticed how Western academia has a blind spot for Russian imperialism? They dig into British, French, American colonialism, but bought into inadvertently Soviet anti-imperialist propaganda. Meanwhile, the USSR was doing ethnic cleansing, Russification, and crushing independence movements, but it gets glossed over. Even after the collapse, fears of chaos/nationalism led to dismissing independence movements. Maybe it's the short form/nuance filter in action. Yeah, it's just this weird, like, America bad thing. Am I making this up? I don't know if I'm buying into a little bit too much Russian propaganda, but for the, was it true that they were just literally squishing people under tanks in the for the Hungarian Revolution? This is the one where, this is where the term tanky comes from. Because I know they rolled tanks into the city to squash this revolution because the Hungarians were trying to revolt. Yes, they were actually running people over with tanks. But this is where the term tanky comes from. Nobody cares about any of this shit, though. Man, if you are if you're a blue collar worker in the U.S. and you're broke, you should just come fucking move to Miami because goddamn, there's always construction out here. Or go to Seattle, bro. I have never seen more cranes in my life than when I'm in Seattle. Well, it's been a few years, but you see like 50. They must be fucking building on every single building out there. What the fuck? I don't know if it's still like that, but.
And support they need so that the people who have already been mobilized can have these weapons and provide the reserves that are necessary in Ukraine. Let's leave an open-ended commitment for Mr. Trump. Let's tell the Ukrainians, strike to your heart's content in Russia. You get no sanctuary, Mr. Putin. You started this. You pay the price.
Yeah.
And then let's go into the talk with understanding what we want. We want all of Ukraine's land back. We want reparations. We want the children returned. We want...
Holy... What? Based? Who is this guy? Oh, my God.
Understanding what we want. We want all of Ukraine's land back. We want reparations. We want the children returned. We want the missing people accounted for. And we want the war criminals put on trial. And then we can talk about sanctions relief. No sanctions relief until the conditions are satisfied. And, it's very hard for democracies to be able to stand up to a man like Putin. He doesn't have to worry about re-election. But we need the leadership in the West. I've seen it in some countries. Macron sometimes comes off very strong. Britain has come off very strong in this. And right now, the Biden administration is trying to surge support into Ukraine. And I think President Trump, when he comes in, is going to realize that whatever his relationship is with Mr. Putin and however many times he's called him, he's not going to easily give in and sacrifice Ukraine. He can't afford to. And Putin's already threatened him.
Piers.
Putin's already told him that he's worried about his safety. That's like Tony Soprano saying to you, I'm not worried about the way you're walking across the street. So I'm not angry, Piers, except that there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Can I get in here and respond now, please?
Yeah, okay, General, thank you. Just, if you don't mind, I'll bring the others in. I've got to say, you have articulated exactly what I've been feeling this entire time. And I've started to think I was going completely mad. But to have somebody with your experience, particularly from the very start of NATO, outlining what I believe has been the way this has all played out.
Thank you, Mr. NATO.
Is actually quite reassuring me that I've not gone nuts. Let me bring in Cenk, because you've not had a chance to respond for a while. Scott, I will come to you after Cenk, right? I must let Cenk have his say. Cenk, you've been listening to all this, very different opinions. What is your reaction?
Okay, Cenk. Where does Cenk stand on this? I think he's just like a peace. We need peace, guys. I think he's like a peace at all costs. And then like a little bit of America bad. Peace and a little bit of America bad, I think. But he'll say Putin is bad. He might even think like Putin is worse than the West for sure. But also America kind of bad and we need peace, I think. But let's see.
Yeah, I want to tell you my thoughts, and then I actually would love to ask General Clark a question. And so, look...
and something about the military-industrial complex and the donor class, because they'd sell for money for the Halliburtons and something. Iraq, yeah, okay.
I understand both sides of this equation. And so if you're the Ukrainians, imagine if some other nation had taken 20% of America. Would we want to give up? Would we want to go, oh, yeah, it's okay, just take Alabama, Mississippi, Texas, et cetera. It's fine. No, we'd hate it, and we'd fight forever, right? So I understand. On the other hand, when General Clark starts talking about the nuclear weapons, I get super scared, because what if Trump's bluff gets called at some point? Trump's main bluff is, oh, yeah, you better not mess with me. I'm crazy. I'll make this war much bigger if you mess with me. Yeah, but what if Putin says, yeah, go ahead? Well, then we're in a lot of trouble, right? Because I don't want to get involved in a war like this. I don't want to get involved with nuclear weapons, et cetera. On the other hand,
I'm so sorry. I know that this sounds unhinged. But he's being unhinged. If somebody says, we're going to make this a bigger conflict, all right? The only response is, okay, your nuclear winter is going to be a lot colder than ours, all right? Good luck. And then you send your subs out, you get your planes airborne, and you bring your ICBMs out. And that's what it has to be. Because as soon as somebody thinks that they can saber rattle nuclear weapons and you back off, you've basically told them, listen, okay, there's so much in life where I tell people, like, people are always like, why is this guy so irrational? Well, what does he do whenever, what do you do when he acts like this? Well, eventually, like, he screams at me and and eventually, yeah, I give in and I stop and it's like, oh, well, it sounds like he's not being irrational. It sounds like he's being perfectly rational. When he hits you, when he screams at you, you fuck off and he gets what he wants. It sounds like he's actually being incredibly sane, right? If you saber rattle your nuclear arsenal and people acquiesce and let you do whatever, you want to do, what are you training them to do? Oh, well, whenever I bring up the nuke thing, everybody seems to fuck off. What's the message that you send to the world? One, you should nuclear saber rattle. It works because you've got useful idiots like Cenk here, who actually I believe is a useful idiot. I don't think he's bad faith like the other guy's a Russian fucking stooge, okay? I think Cenk is just being dumb here, right? Which is compliment compared to this other guy. I think Cenk is earnest. But when you acquiesce to people saber rattling, you tell people that one, yeah, if Russia wants to do whatever they want, they can as long as they say we have nukes. And two, you tell everybody else that you need nuclear weapons as well, right? Because we're not going to listen to you or do anything unless you've got nukes as well, right? And the question that I always pose to people like this, because there might be rational arguments for why we shouldn't support Ukraine, okay? I would disagree with them, but maybe reasonable minds can make that argument. But none of those arguments include the phrase, well, it might be World War III if they nuke us. Because that exact same argument can be transposed onto every other NATO country, right? What if Russia invades Poland? Well, fuck. Do we really want to be threatening World War III? Do we really want nuclear winter? Do we really want to bring out the nukes? All those exact same arguments carry over. So is there no more Article 5? Do we not defend allies from invasions from nuclear powers then? Is that, that doesn't make any sense. What's the response there,
Point about Russian aggression is definitely true. I can't stand these people starting wars, taking territory, and it breaks my heart to see it. They kidnap children, et cetera. So, General Clark, the question I want to ask you, and you know how much I respect you, and we have a relationship. By the way, the audience should know, General Clark is the one that called out the neocons for trying to invade 7 countries at once, including the Iraq War, and so he's earned a lot of respect by doing that. But, General Clark, this is a genuine question, which is, Okay, but if we go with what you're saying, how long do we fight? How long does Ukraine fight? How much money do we spend? How many years of war do we have to endure? And what if Ukraine just doesn't win? So, okay, but if we go with what you're saying, how long do we fight? How long does Ukraine fight? How much money do we spend? How many years of war do we have to endure? And what if Ukraine just doesn't win? Question, which is, okay, but if we go with what you're saying, how long do we fight? How long does Ukraine fight? How much money do we spend? How many years of war do we have to endure? And what if Ukraine just doesn't win?
Why doesn't he make this exact argument for Palestine that has less right to their borders, that has less of an international agreement in terms of establishing where they exist, that has less of a chance of winning? Why doesn't he make this exact same argument for Palestine? Imagine an argument that you're like, maybe it's time to just stop fighting, bro. Like, are you really going to beat Israel this way? How many of your people are dying, right? Didn't you say 20, 30, 40, 100,000? How many people are you saying are dead right now? Maybe they should just stop fighting, bro, right? But when it comes to Palestine, bro, they got to fight fucking forever. They need to go forever. And they're fully justified in fighting forever. Who cares how many people die, right?
So let's say we go another 2 years, 5 years, 20 years. How do we resolve it if Ukraine can't win?
Well, I think what you have to do is understand that this war will go on until Putin believes he can't win. So all the discussion in the West about how to preemptively surrender territory and all this it all feeds Putin's appetite. He understands from all this discussion that the West is weakening in its will, and therefore
this is also invoking Hillary Clinton's public-private position. Even if Ukraine was willing to surrender some land, and even if the United States was willing to entertain that agreement, that's not what you say publicly, and that's not the position that you present publicly. You say, "Oh, territory in Ukraine that Russia wants to occupy, yeah, sure, they might get some territory. It's going to be population zero by the time they get it, because every man, woman, and child is going to fight to the death." Right? Even if that's not the actual position, right? This is still be publicly facing. This is what you would say, right? And like people like Trump and the Trump's dick suck should know this, right? When you go into negotiations, you don't go in saying like, "Okay, I'm willing to give this much," right? You're going to like, "I want 40%." Maybe you will negotiate down to 30%, but you don't open with like, "I want 40%, but I'd be willing to go as low as 30." Why the fuck would you say that, right?
Appetite. He understands from all this discussion that the West is weakening in its will, and therefore if he just keeps shoving soldiers forward, that eventually the West will comply and cut off assistance to Ukraine and tell Ukraine, "Good luck. Hope you enjoy being part of Poland again," because that's his aim. He doesn't really care about Lviv. What he wants is the north coast of the Black Sea and Odessa, and of course Kharkiv and Kyiv and so forth, and then he wants the rest of Europe, Eastern Europe, that used to be under Soviet dominion. He needs this in order to be able to confront China. And this is the ultimate fear of Russia and its leadership. And they know they can't confront China unless they have control over Eastern Europe, including the Baltics and Poland and the rest of the Balkan Peninsula. And so it's a long-term geostrategic game. And Cenk, I just tell you this, there's no American soldiers over there getting killed. And most of the money that's been appropriated by the United States has gone to buy new weapons in the United States. We're giving them the old stuff, the old ATACMs. We've just recently even reprioritized.
Like, why is this still a talking point? Like, why do people still bring up this? We gave them $200 billion in fucking Benjamins, that we just shipped like crates of stacks of cash.
Military sales program. We're still selling ATACMs to Morocco. Now, why does Morocco need 68 ATACMs? I don't know. But we're selling stuff off Patriots all over the world. That stuff should go to Ukraine. As long as the United States stands firm, we won't have nuclear weapons and nuclear war. Putin doesn't want it either. But he does believe right now that we will collapse. And he will continue to threaten the nuclear and play the nuclear card because that's the Russians play it.
Yeah.
And so you
and
have to stand firm against it. And you need strong leadership, and you need the American people behind you. And what you have to understand is that Putin understands how to manipulate public opinion. In every country in Europe, there are people there saying, just like one of the gentlemen on this panel said, this is crazy, and people are getting killed, and I'm tired of seeing people dying, and we've got to have peace. In 1937-38, in Europe, everybody had fresh memories of the First World War. It was a horrible experience. A whole generation of British young men were wiped out. The French got so bad that in one group of French divisions, they pulled out every 10th soldier and shot him for cowardice. Nobody wanted to repeat of the First World War. And so
I remember World War II, they had to send this mission because like 3 or 4 brothers in the same family had died, and they had to send this whole squad to get this with the last brother. I'm just kidding.
Hitler occupied the Rhineland against himself. Hitler rearmed. Hitler rebuilt the military. And at every stage, there were people who said, well, this is really dangerous, but please, we can't think about it. It can't be another world war. So we're revisiting this in a slightly different form today. If we believe in democracy, if we believe in what we set up, if we believe in the lessons we learned from...
Remember, World War I was called the Great War because it was supposed to be the war to end all war. That was supposed to be the last war in the history of the planet.
Second World War. Then we've got to stand firm against Mr. Putin. President Biden should have said to him, look, bud, you come after Ukraine, I promise you, you're going to lose. You're going to lose. But he didn't say that. And he's never said that.
No, he hasn't.
That's the policy has to start.
Okay, General, thank you very much. Let me bring Scott Halton in to respond to that, because you're being compared to the people back in the late 30s who just didn't see the danger of Adolf Hitler and the Nazis.
Yeah, it's complete. If anything, God, please bring up Azov. If anything, the Ukrainians are the Nazis. Please, 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 yes. Please, yes. I need a Red Bull, hold on. Please, if anything, it's the Ukrainians that are the Nazis. Azov. What about Azov? I don't know if they might have retired that talking point by now, but please.
completely preposterous, and it's the refuge of scoundrels who have run out of arguments. I think anyone could see that. It's the same thing as this endless claim. I mean, isn't this just a talking point that anyone who disagrees is repeating Russian talking points? I don't sit around watching RT all day, memorizing what the Russian regime says and repeating that. I wrote a book that's 775.
I mean, they gave like substantive refutations to everything you said. I don't know why you're harping so much on this point, but okay.
1,000 words. Most of it is American graybeards talking about how they know better than the thing that they're about to do, and then doing
You're the only one with a beard on this panel, sir.
it anyway. And one of the things that I talk about in there, although I couldn't find too much about General Clark's role in this, but when there was a debate, and I'd like to pose this in the form of a question to him, when there was a debate in the 1990s in the Bill Clinton administration about whether to do NATO expansion or whether to do the Partnership for Peace, was it not?
Did they not consider that if they expand NATO too much, that it might threaten Russian interests? Yeah, these were talks that all of these things were considered early on, and some of these proposals were shot down early on for sure. But countries were begging to get. These are all the most boring talking points. This guy wrote a book. It's all like level 1.
The Secretary
I don't even know. Maybe that's not what he's going to say, though. I'm sorry.
of Defense, William Perry, and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, John Shalikashvili, with the help of General Clark. Weren't they the ones who argued the Pentagon for peace? Let's do the Partnership for Peace instead of NATO expansion. And it was Richard Holbrooke and Talbot and Lake who outclassed the Pentagon in office politics and forced through NATO expansion instead. And the William Perry, John Shalikashvili, and I believe at the time, Wesley Clark argument was, we don't want to redraw the dividing line in Europe. Yes, it's true. A lot of these countries that used to be dominated by Soviet communists in the battle days, of course, want to join NATO. But we got to look at what's good for us. And what's most important for us is that we keep a decent relationship, a stable relationship with Russia. And one great way to do that.
What is even that argument? Like, fuck all these other countries. Like you're the one. This is like the America evil argument. Why is that even the most important thing? Like,
would be to, as they said they were going to do at the time, Piers, turn NATO into a political organization, sort of like the EU.
Fuck me. This is true, actually. And honest to God, I just don't have the World War II background to say it. So I try not to make very many strong claims about World War II because we haven't gotten there yet. But somebody said, Destiny, I hate that he said he's comparing them to Nazis in the 30s. They aren't Nazis in the 30s. They are Americans in the 30s. You have Coughlin and Lindbergh pushing hard for isolationism in the face of Europe falling. Listen, I want to champion the U.S., and I love that the U.S. did what we did in Europe. And I think... but we didn't join World War II out of noble intention. We did it because Japan attacked us, which is, in my opinion, a little bit shameful, or a lot of bit shameful, actually. I think it's quite shameful. The U.S. was not drawn into World War II out of some noble desire to save Europe, or out of some, insight into the concentration camps, or out of a desire to quell fascism, quash fascism, whatever. It was because Japan attacked us, which is shameful.
EU plus America. But then they would have, instead of an alliance, because there's no enemy anymore, now we would have the Partnership for Peace, a new security architecture, and Russia, the Russian Federation, and Ukraine would be members of it. And then that way, Ukraine's neutrality as a obviously extremely important country locked between European civilization and Russia there, the controversy will be settled with a pseudo, like a de facto.
We turned away the St. Louis and sent the Jews back on that ship. Yeah, a few ships with Jewish people got turned back. They were pretty ass-hanging about that. It's one of the things they took out on the Palestinians and the British. Yeah, because there were sometimes ships would be leaving. That was very bad timing for the for Palestine and Israel. There's a lot of I'm laughing. It's not funny. Fuck. Yeah, but a lot of Jews that were trying to flee Europe or flee the concentration camps or whatever. Like the British, like, sorry, Palestine's closed. Too many of you fuckers have came in. Like, go back and get killed. And like, yeah.
And Russia there, the controversy will be settled with a pseudo, like a de facto permanent neutrality there. And then what happened was the Hawks won the argument. And then as all of the graybeards said at the time, oh no, you see what we're doing? We're just redrawing the line. The policy has gone from containment to friends to neo-containment. This is before W. Bush ever even came to town.
Okay, well, let me put that point then.
What did he even say that rebuted us? I wish the debates were more formal. Like, none of this was responsive to like any of the points that this guy brought out. Like, this is such a waste conversation. And then now he's kind of like, whatever.
To someone who, by the way, for the record, does not have a grey beard, General Clark. Would you like to respond to what you just heard?
It's actually, you're right. We had a multiple.
People are saying that FDR's aggressive stance towards Europe is what is part of a contributing factor that forced Japan to attack us in the Pacific. So maybe America gets more credit.
Multiplicity of interests with Russia at the time the Clinton administration came in. And the first interest was to control the nuclear weapons that were in Kazakhstan, Ukraine, and the loose nukes argument took priority. And we got legislation passed, the non-Lugar agreement amendment. Basically, we put billions of dollars.
Now some people are saying, no, not true. I don't know enough to side with either side, so. But America was apparently hard embargoing oil on Japan, and FDR was taking political hits for it, or whatever. Okay, I don't know. I haven't cited a lot. I don't know. Destiny, are you saying that we sent our troops on the ground? America sent millions in the form of aid and arms. We were in support of the Allies, but didn't join until Japan attacked. Are you talking about Ukraine? Or are you talking about World War II?
And we got legislation passed, the non-Lugar agreement amendment. Basically, we put billions of dollars into helping control the former Soviets' nuclear arsenal. And as part of that, we assured Ukraine that when they gave up their nuclear weapons, and Russia signed on to this, that their boundaries would be respected. You see, in 1991, Ukraine had already voted in favor of independence. The people in Ukraine never wanted to be under Russian control. It's a separate culture. It's a different language. If you look up, and I don't know if you speak Russian, but apparently you don't, but I do. And I thought, well, I'll just brush up on my Russian and be able to speak Ukrainian. It's a different language, and it's a different culture. It's a different history. Ukraine's been independent in the past, and it was one of the first subjects of Russia's imperial ambitions going back to Catherine the Great. And the way that it operates is, it's not a nice colonialism. It's an ugly colonialism in which Russia says, I'm in charge here. I want a part of your business. And they buy people and they influence. And I've met many Ukrainian leaders over the years, including some who've made billions of dollars off their associations with Russia. So when the United States looked at this in the early 1990s, we were hopeful that there would actually be democratic reform in Russia. But it didn't happen. And as Bill Clinton traveled abroad in 1993 and in 1994, and he looked at it himself and talked to these East European leaders who were emerging, they begged Clinton to give us the protection of NATO. And so that weekend that you're referring to when Al Gore made the speech that Richard Holbrooke wrote in Berlin, and yes, I checked with my bosses in the Pentagon and said, no, of course we're not in charge. We don't want NATO enlarged. We've got enough problems. Don't bring any other issues. Partnership for Peace had already been established. Russia was a member of it. And I said to my boss, I said, they keep putting this thing in here about enlarging NATO. And I keep scratching it out and it keeps coming back in. And sure enough, Vice President Gore gave that speech, and he gave it at the direction of the President of the United States because President Clinton himself, in going through Eastern Europe, had looked and listened to the leadership there.
I mean, do you think we should send troops now? With your comparison in the past, feels like you're implying we should send troops on the ground because we didn't send them soon enough in the past. What do we do now? I don't know. It's clusterfuck now, but it should have been a stronger response in the very beginning. I still think now, like if Ukraine wants to fight, I think that the answer should be, okay, well, you know what? Here's everything you need. Let us know what you need. Do whatever you want with it, and good luck. Save for like nuclear weapons, at the very least. So then if they lose at this point, at least it's because we gave them everything. At least at this point, although that should have happened 2 years ago, if not 10 years ago, in 2014. But
he knew the history, he knew foreign relations, he knew foreign policy, and he determined that the best avenue for peace forward was to both provide security for Eastern Europe through opportunities for NATO membership if they wanted it, and work with Russia and give Russia a special relationship with NATO. So we formed the NATO-Russia Council. The NATO-Russia Council had all the members of NATO listening to Russia and all of its concerns in 1997, 1998, 1999. I was there sitting in that council when former Russian Foreign Minister Yevgeny Primakov gave us a lecture. Russia has no permanent friends. Russia has only permanent interests. He's looking at me, and I know who he was. He's the guy who basically started the Palestinian terrorist organizations as a KGB agent. And he knew who Russia has no permanent in that council when in 1997, 1998, 1999. I was there sitting in that council when former Russian Foreign Minister Yevgeny Primakov gave us a lecture. Russia has no permanent friends. Russia has only permanent interests. He's looking at me, and I know who he was. He's the guy who basically started the Palestinian terrorist organizations as a KGB agent. And he knew who I was, and we knew each other. And I knew what he was saying. He was saying that Russia didn't appreciate NATO, wouldn't cooperate with NATO, and was going to go its own way. He later ran for president, lost it to Vladimir Putin. But the point is that the United States worked assiduously to try to bring stability to Eastern Europe, including working with Russia. And it was Russia that really didn't want this. From the beginning, we actually had hopes that Russia might join NATO. But from the beginning of Putin's time, he crushed democracy, crushed dissent, and step by step consolidated power using the mafia, the Russian mafia, and the intelligence agencies. And so we are in the position where we are today. I've always wished I could talk to Putin and say, look, it's not that we disrespect you. We like Russia. We love Russian music, culture, your history. There's so many great things that have come out of Russia. But you can't step on other people. You can't treat people that way. You can't invade other countries. We're not going to invade you. There's no threat here. I was with the Russian foreign minister when we were dealing with the Conventional Foreign Forces in Europe Treaty in 1998. And Minister Ivanov said, well, under this treaty, in a time of tension, NATO could put a division in Slovakia on the borders of Russia, or Belarus. And I said, Mr. Minister, one NATO division on the borders of Belarus is a threat to Russia? Come on now. Ivanov laughed. He knew it wasn't a threat. Yeah. He knew it. Yeah. And so, you just, I'm not accusing anybody of reading and repeating what Russia's telling you to say.
Please donate towards Ukraine. The website is called United24. We can all help, even if governments don't. Could you please promote this? I don't know anything about that donation thing. I don't know anything about that website, so.
Saying there's a lot of misinformation out here, but we are where we are. And the only way...
Well, can I have just one short follow-up there, Piers?
Very quickly. We have to wrap, but very quickly, yeah.
Sure.
They didn't even get to argue with each other.
Very quickly. I wonder, General Clark, if you're aware that your then boss, William Perry, he later told The Guardian that it was the greatest regret of his life that he did not do every single thing he could to stop Clinton from going down the path of NATO expansion.
Well, okay, I'll tell you what I'll do. Here's what I'll do, Scott. I'll just ask General Clark, and please be brief if you don't mind, General Clark. But was Clinton right or wrong, looking with hindsight?
Well, I think Clinton was right in hindsight because when you unravel what actually happened with the dissolution of the Soviet Union, and I have the greatest respect for Dr. Perry, but the KGB, there's a book written on this called Putin's People, and you can read it. But basically, the KGB saw it collapsing in the late 1980s. They didn't trust Gorbachev. They moved the money to the West. When democracy started, most of the people in the political parties in Russia were former intelligence agents. They'd been schooled in how to campaign. They formed different political parties to make it appear as though there were different parties. But in reality, they were anxious to regain power. And so we never really followed through with the opportunity that the dissolution of the Soviet Union presented to us. Right. I mean, we could have sent democracy trainers into the Soviet Union. We didn't. We had the National Endowment for Democracy, but it was just scratching the surface. We never really reached out to the Russian people. It's a different culture. They don't understand it. They're isolated. And just like the American people don't understand foreign policy, neither do the Russian people. A UN diplomat told me once, he said, you Americans are like the Russians. Most of your people don't even have passports. You live far from national borders. You don't have any appreciation for other nationalities. We could have extended a stronger hand in friendship. And I'm talking not Clinton. I'm talking about George H. Bush when it happened. Yeah. We just didn't do it. And we had a very brief window to make a great difference. We didn't. I think that the protection we provided through NATO membership for the countries of Eastern Europe and that we want to extend to Ukraine has been really important. If you look, I drove a couple of times from Eastern Poland into Ukraine. In Eastern Poland, the houses are painted, the fields are cultivated, everything looks good as soon as you go across that border. The difference in prosperity is marked. And it's marked because Ukraine hasn't had the protection of the European Union and NATO. And that's why the people in 2014, 2013 in Maidan, they saw this. Ukraine and Poland were economically similar in the 1980s. But by 2014, Poland's GDP per capita was 2 or 3 times what it was in Ukraine, simply because Poland had the association with the West with its security provided by NATO. So we've got to get through what is more than a bump in a road. It's a critical period in international policy where we're going to decide whether the rule of law prevails or we're going to go back to the 19th century competition between empires and emperors and to hell with the people underneath. And that's where we are.
I've got to leave it there. I don't want to, actually. I could honestly do another 2 or 3 hours of this. It has been an absolutely fascinating conversation with all of you. I really appreciate you all joining me. I've got to leave it there reluctantly, but thank you very much indeed.
Well,
Hey, thanks, everybody.
Piers, nice to be with you.
Thank you, General.
okay. Well, that was.
Before we go, a quick look at what on earth has gone on in South Korea over the past 48 hours is the American political analyst on Inter-Korean affairs, Robbie